are now called together, called by bell and bird, called by daylight and breeze, called by the beat of our hearts to join again the living tradition we share, to answer again the call of mystery and wonder. Today, with the World Peace Bell ringing from Newport, Kentucky, and loons calling in the Adirondacks, let us remember the first of our tradition's sources, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life.
Our opening hymn is number 358, Rank by Rank Again We Stand. Please sing along with the Chancel Choir of First Unitarian Church of Oakland.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains, New York, where I am coming to you from the congregation's parsonage.
And I'm Karen Leahy, member of our worship committee, serving as worship associate today, also in the parsonage.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, our congregation's music director, coming to you live from my home in Manhattan.
And all of us are on land formerly of the Lenape Nation.
Tracy Brenneman, Our Director of Religious Education is supporting online religious education classes for our children and youth in another Zoom room right now.
A liberal faith tradition is characterized by 5 values. First, openness to new truth.
Religious liberalism depends first on the principle that revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism. Our religious tradition is a living tradition because we are always learning.
Second, freedom.
All relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not on coercion. We freely choose congregational relationship and spiritual practice. We deny infallibility and resist hierarchical authority.
Third, justice.
We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. It is this which makes the role of the prophet central and indispensable in liberalism.
Fourth, institution building.
Religious liberals deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. Justice is an exercise of just and lawful institutional power. Institution building involves the messiness of claiming our power amid conflicting perspectives and needs, rather than the purity of ahistorical, decontextualized ideals.
Fifth, hope.
The resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism.
The mission of this congregation is to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world.
It is the 9th Sunday of winter, 4 more to go. The snow moon was full on Wednesday and is now waning gibbous. The days lengthen at White Plains latitude. Today we'll have more daylight than yesterday by 2 minutes, 35 seconds. Temperatures here in the last week have waxed and waned, but are a little warmer, and the Snow Queen is not quite ready to relinquish her grasp. And happy President's Day tomorrow.
A special welcome to our visitors. We are honored to have you with us. If you're new here today, then please do introduce yourself in the chat.
You will find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. Our website also offers information to help keep us connected, as well as a donate button.
If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone you'd like to share, please enter it into the chat. And please make the first word be joy, sorrow, or milestone, so that at the end of the prayer, I'll know which chat entries are meant for me to speak.
We now invite you to light a chalice or candle at home along with Nikki Clemens as she leads us in our chalice lighting. Then we have a message from Board Chair Joe Majak, followed by today's UU Minute.
Good morning. I'm Nikki Clemens, a member of the Board of Trustees this year here at CUUC. I welcome you. I'm a lifelong UU and a member of this congregation since I was a small child. I guess spring is around the corner. I'm seeing a few buds coming up in the garden, and that's a welcome respite to this winter. So, on this 9th Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the first source of the living tradition we share, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Please join with me in the responsive chalice lighting from Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I still can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do.
Hi, my name is Joe Majak. My spouse, Ann, and I have been members of CUUC for over 30 years, and I am presently serving as the chair of the board. We've seen the congregation go through a variety of transformation over the years. New ministers have passed the baton from one to another, leading us on different trails to a common spiritual destination. The same is true of our dedicated religious education leaders, as they have helped shape the path for our youth and children. They have all been transformative, resulting in today's congregation that's much more comfortable in taking charge of its destiny and charting its own journey. One of the important chapters in this transformation has been the shift in how the Board of Trustees gets its work done. With a significant change in demographics, namely smaller families, and other changes in traditional religions, our congregation finds itself in the same position as other traditional denominations, a declining rate of growth. In response, our board has increasingly relied upon ad hoc work teams to carry out its responsibilities. Today, committees of the board are used much less frequently than in the past. In order to complete the transition, we are asking the congregation to agree with the board's recommendation to make a reduction in board size. Each year is increasingly difficult when it comes to selecting qualified candidates to serve the 3-year board term. Many other congregations our size have already made this adjustment, and the trend towards smaller boards remains in place. It's time for us to make this common sense reduction too. It will also help us fill all the additional roles necessitated by the ministerial transition which is underway. In order to fill the search committee and the self-assessment committee, we need to have all hands on deck. A reduced demand for board members will be helpful here. Our goal is to reduce the overall size of the voting members of the board from 11 to 7. Our board reduction model delivers this outcome in an immediate transition that takes place on June 5th, 2022, the date of our annual meeting. There is no lengthy drawn-out process here. So please join us for the special congregational meeting on Sunday, February 27th, 1 week from today, right after the Sunday worship service. Both the Sunday service and the congregational meeting will be virtual events. We need 52, that's 52 members, to meet the quorum requirements. So it is very important for all of us to participate in next Sunday's special congregational meeting. Please be sure to mark your calendar for next Sunday. Thank you so much.
After William Ellery Channing had delivered his 1819 Baltimore sermon, and after Massachusetts courts had delivered their ruling in the 1820 Dedham case, the Liberals faced the question whether they ought to organize a new denomination. Our younger ministers sensed an opportunity and were keen to organize so as to better spread their faith. Our older ministers were reluctant. They feared the consequences of sectarianism. Their focus was less on seeking converts and more on moral character, civic virtue, public welfare, and philanthropy. Still, in 1820, a group of ministers met in the vestry of Channing's Federal Street Church. They organized the Berry Street Conference for the purpose of mutual support and for publishing their ideas. Within a few years, they began discussion of advancing Unitarianism through an organization devoted to the publication of tracts. At the 1825 May meeting of the Berry Street Conference, it was unanimously decided to organize the American Unitarian Association. A committee drafted a constitution, and on 1825 May 26, the American Unitarian Association was born. As fate would have it, on that very day, the British Unitarian Association was founded in England, though neither side had any awareness that the same thing was happening across the pond. The American Unitarian Association was not what we think of as a denominational structure. It was an association of individuals who signed up to be members, whereas our current Unitarian Universalist Association is an association of congregations, not of individuals. The original American Unitarian Association was a clearinghouse for publications. Its purpose was to spread the word through print rather than to serve and support congregations and coordinate their activities. Nevertheless, it was a start, and its publications were a part of Unitarianism's growth. As I was casting about for a reading for today's invocation, the gods of Google placed before my attention an entry from a blog called A Year's Rising with Mary Oliver. I happen to know this blog because it was a project Laura Kim Joyner began in 2010. Her plan was that for 1 year, every morning, first thing upon rising, she would read a different Mary Oliver poem, reflect on it, and then post on this blog the poem along with some of her own reflections. The project ended up stretching out for several years, though after the first year, entries no longer came every day. I share with you today the entry from 2013, June 15. The Mary Oliver poem with which it begins is titled Poem of the One World. I'll read the poem, then you'll hear Laura Kim sharing her reflection on it. Poem of the One World. This morning, the beautiful white heron was floating along above the water and then into the sky of this, the one world we all belong to, where everything sooner or later is a part of everything else, which thought made me feel, for a little while, quite beautiful myself.
It's easy to feel beautiful when the pileated woodpecker flashes by with enormous wings in pretentious hurry. Who cannot imagine feeling smashing with such a colorful red hat? When a chimpanzee kills another chimpanzee, is he beautiful? How about when a white heron spears a fish? Is this not tragic for the fish? How then do we hold both beauty and tragedy? Answer. Silly, we hold always both in our heart, for we are of the same mix as they, beautiful and harmful. Request. Remember that we all are a poem of the one world. Breathe in beauty, but also breathe in suffering and tragedy. Then breathe out less harm.
Now please join the UUs of Santa Monica for our sung invocation, We Would Be One.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. On our way, as one we pledge ourselves to greater service,
you join with me now in prayer? Dear source of healing and wholeness, we call by many names. Be with us and strengthen us in love and courage, in the ways of peace and tenderness. Though COVID has lately been easing a bit, the death toll is ongoing. In the last week, COVID claimed over 67,000 more lives, over 12,000 of them in the US and 15 of them here in Westchester County. We hold in our hearts those affected by the devastating mudslide in Petrópolis, Brazil, the dead and missing from the Spanish fishing trawler that sank off the coast of Newfoundland, those for whom each breath is a struggle. We grieve the loss of trees, a reported loss of 8 million trees this winter in the United Kingdom due to storms, with thousands more threatened, and the record high deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon in January. And we acknowledge our complicity in life cycle choices and lifestyle choices that affect the trees we depend upon and love. We breathe in gratitude for policies that expand freedom. Lawmakers in New Zealand unanimously voted to ban conversion therapy, protecting those who are persecuted because of their gender or sexual orientation. And in Kuwait, where they have overturned a law that criminalized cross-dressing. We breathe in awe for the beauty of the earth. And so we ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, and to heal what is broken. Amen. We now observe 60 seconds of silence.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
We'll now have our spiritual practice of the week, be grateful to everyone, and then our hymn, What is This Life?
From Norman Fisher's Training in Compassion. Training number 11 is Be Grateful to Everyone. Gratitude is at the center of spirituality. Thankfulness for life and air, sunlight and trees, our bodies. Here, the focus is on being grateful for and to people, every one of them. We were all once infants, and our survival depended on someone providing comprehensive care. Even as adults, we remain dependent on others to grow the food that sustains us, to harvest it, package it, and ship it. We depend on others for the car or train that takes us to work, and for the road or railroad, and for extracting the fuel. Others sewed your clothing. Very likely others built your house using materials made by still others. Without others, you have nothing. You might work and make money and pay for the things you get from others, but remember, money itself makes no sense without others. Where does the person we take ourselves to be come from in the first place? Our genes came from others, and most of what we learned from others. There could not be what we call a person without other people. We can say person as if there could be such an autonomous thing, but in fact there is no such thing. An independent, isolated, atomized person is impossible. And here we are not only speaking of our needing others practically, we're talking about our inmost sense of identity. Our consciousness of ourselves is never independent of others. So set aside some of your gratitude time specifically for being grateful to everyone. Please see the full post at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian.
Our hymn is number 94, What is This Life? Please sing along with Adam and me.
What is this life if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. No time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like stars at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet out and they dance. A poor life this, if full of care. We have no time to stand and stare.
Let us recount the litany of life. 13.8 billion years ago, the universe began. In the last third of the universe's lifespan, about 4.6 billion years ago, our sun formed, and within about 60 million years, the Earth. After about a billion years, which gets us to 3.5 billion years ago, life on Earth began. It took life 1.5 billion years to become eukaryotic, that is, cells with a distinct nucleus, which happened when symbiotically linked prokaryotic cells fused into one organism. That was 2 billion years ago. 800 million years ago, some eukaryotes developed into the first animal. 535 million years ago, within the last 4% of the age of the universe, some animals developed into the first vertebrates. 200 million years ago, some vertebrates developed into the first mammals. 60 million years ago, some mammals developed into the first primates. 25 million years ago, some primates developed into the first hominoids, apes. 20 million years ago, the hominoids split into the hominids, the great apes, and the gibbons. 17 million years ago, the line leading to orangutans split from the rest of the hominids. 10 million years ago, the line leading to gorillas split from the hominin line. 6 million years ago, the hominins split into the Australopithecines and the Panina, the chimps and bonobos. About 2 million years ago, from the Australopithecines, the genus Homo emerged. There have been 8 or 10 species of Homo, many of them on Earth at the same time, but they all died out except the one called sapiens, which emerged only about 200,000 years ago. I love recounting this litany of our place in the family of things. I always have to relook up the numbers. I remember the ballpark of maybe half of them. Maybe you won't remember any of those numbers, but just to hear them and hold them for a moment offers a chance for awe, both humbling and glorifying at the same time. How small we are, and yet how grand the long story that brought us into being. If the period since vertebrate life first appeared on Earth, not life, not eukaryotes, not animals, but vertebrate animals, if the period since vertebrate animals began were expressed as 1 year, then the first mammals didn't appear until August 17th of that year. The first primates weren't here until November 21st. The hominids, the great apes, got here on December 18. The last common ancestor of humans and chimps lived and died on December 27th. And humans didn't show up until almost 9 p.m. on December 31st, just in time for the New Year's Eve party. That's us on the time scale of vertebrate life. Early Homo sapiens probably played a role in the extinction of other Homo species, such as Neanderthals that dominated Europe as recently as 100,000 years ago. But 2 species from the genus Pan have so far survived humans: chimpanzees and bonobos. Outside the regions of the African habitats of chimps and bonobos, human civilization in Europe, Asia, and the Americas unfolded unaware of our closest relatives. Up until the 19th century, Westerners never saw live apes other than humans. As the primatologist Franz de Waal tells it, when the first non-human apes went on display, no one could believe their eyes. In 1835, a male chimpanzee arrived at London Zoo and was exhibited clothed in a sailor suit. He was followed by a female orangutan who was put in a dress. Queen Victoria saw the exhibit and was appalled. She couldn't stand the sight of these apes, calling them painfully and disagreeably human. Charles Darwin also saw the exhibit and also found these apes strikingly human-like, but he was not repulsed by it as the Queen had been. He felt that anyone convinced of human superiority ought to come take a look. Earlier, I referred to the long story that brought us into being and subsequently said that's us on the time scale of vertebrate life. But who is this us? That litany of life I conducted offers concentric circles of us humans, us hominins, us hominids, us hominoids, us primates, us mammals, us vertebrates, us animals, us Terran life forms. It's all us. Sometimes we need a little help remembering that all Homo sapiens are us, whatever their class or color or gender identity or affectional orientation. Sometimes we need a little help remembering that not only Homo sapiens are us. I trust this will not come to you as painful and disagreeable as it was to Queen Victoria, whose brief observation of Tommy the chimpanzee revealed only a tiny sliver of what we now understand about chimps, and yet revealed more than she was comfortable knowing. I get how being disabused of human specialness can be disconcerting. But it can also be, as it was for Charles Darwin, exhilarating. It offers us new possibilities for connection, opens a door for a larger love, while at the same time, because there are important ways that the hominins are different from each other, offering us lessons in respecting people and beings that aren't like us, to accept and embrace kinship while respecting difference. This is the project of making community, whether it's community within our species or within our genus, our tribe, our family, our order, our class, or our phylum. Part of respecting difference is knowing that chimps can be dangerous. Franz de Waal writes that no human in his right mind would walk into a cage with an adult chimpanzee. Chimpanzees don't seem large to us, but their muscle strength far exceeds ours, and reports of horrific attacks are plentiful. So de Waal's story of two elderly hominins is all the more remarkable. One of them was Dutch biologist Jan van Hoof, nearly 80 years old. The other was Mama, a female chimp at the Arnhem Zoo chimpanzee community, a month shy of 59 years old. The two of them had known each other for over 40 years, but hadn't seen each other recently when Jan came to visit the dying matriarch of the Arnhem chimp colony. Curled up in a fetal position in her straw nest, Mama doesn't even look up when Jan, who has boldly entered her night cage, approaches with a few friendly grunts. Those of us who work with non-human apes, writes de Waal, often mimic their typical sounds and gestures. Soft grunts are reassuring. When Mama finally does wake up from her slumber, it takes her a second to realize what's going on. But then she expresses immense joy at seeing Jan up close and in the flesh. Her face changes into an ecstatic grin, a much more expansive one than is typical of our species. Half of Mama's face is a huge smile while she yelps a soft, high-pitched sound for moments of high emotion. In this case, the emotion is clearly positive because she reaches for Jan's head while he bends down. She gently strokes his hair and then drapes one of her long arms around his neck to pull him closer. During this embrace, her fingers rhythmically pat the back of his head and neck in a comforting gesture that chimpanzees also use to quiet a whimpering infant. This was typically Mama. She must have sensed Jan's trepidation about invading her domain, and she was letting him know not to worry. She was happy to see him. The video of Mama's last hug is on YouTube. Not hard to find. Search for Mama's last hug. Let me know if you get through it with dry eyes. I did not. If Queen Victoria was disturbed to see Tommy in a sailor suit, what could she have made of this tender encounter? I will bid you reflect on that as we pause for a musical interlude with Adam and Jacques Ibert.
Thank you, Reverend Meredith. Two short pieces from Jacques Ibert's Histoire, or story, both animal associated. The first, La Meneuse de Tortue d'Or, or the leader of the golden tortoises, and the second, Le Petit Âne Blanc, or the little white donkey. If we weren't in church, I'd probably say something like, I hope you like my little white, you fill in the blank.
Chimps certainly communicate a lot, mostly with signs, though they can be taught to use a few symbols. They certainly don't have the human facility for complex symbol use, including abstract nouns and past tense and future tense verbs, not to mention conditional perfect or future subjunctive or modal verbs. But remember what Talleyrand, the 18th century French clergyman and diplomat, told us about language. Talleyrand said, "God gave humans language so they could conceal their thoughts from one another." In fact, we got so good at hiding our thoughts and intentions from one another that it became useful to have one indicator of our feelings that was very hard to fake. And so we have the blush. Neither chimps nor bonobos, nor as far as we have yet to discover any non-human species, blush. And blushing is very hard to fake. Actors who can easily cry tears upon command find blushing much harder and usually just rely on makeup if a scene calls for a blush. Blushing remains an evolutionary mystery, but one theory is that with all that dissembling and disguising of our thinking made possible by complex symbolic language, it was actually helpful to have some signal that couldn't be controlled, a way to let others know, even if we might not want to, that our embarrassment or strong feeling is genuine. So Mark Twain's quip that man is the only animal that blushes or needs to may have been truer than he knew. Our fancy words, of course, disguise ourselves not only from others, but also from ourselves. We fabricate accounts of what we're doing and what we intend, and then we believe our fabrication. It's not that chimps can't intentionally fool each other and humans, but the study of other hominins does give us some glimpse into part of what may be going on with humans behind the more elaborate linguistic constructs and conceits that our species fronts. When primatologist Franz de Waal began his chimpanzee studies as a young graduate student, it was the flower power era of the 1970s. And what he saw in these other hominins, he began to see in humans. He writes, "My generation was anarchistic and fiercely democratic, did not trust the authorities that ran the university, viewed sexual jealousy as antiquated, and felt that any kind of ambition was suspect. The chimpanzee colony that I watched day in and day out, on the other hand, showed all those reactionary tendencies in spades: power, ambition, jealousy. Sitting there with my shoulder-length hair and nourished by saccharine songs such as Strawberry Fields Forever and Good Vibrations, I went through a truly eye-opening period. Right away, as a human being, I was struck by the similarities between us and our closest relative. And I had to come to grips with behavior that my generation roundly denounced, but that was common in these other apes. I began to better understand my own kind. I started to notice rampant jockeying for position, coalition formation, currying of favors, political opportunism in my own environment. And I don't mean just among the older generation. The student movement had its own alpha males, power struggles, groupies, jealousies. In fact, the more promiscuous we became, the more sexual jealousy reared its ugly head. My ape study gave me the right distance to analyze these patterns, which were plain as day if you looked for them. Student leaders ridiculed and isolated potential challengers and stole everybody's girlfriend, while at the same time preaching the wonders of egalitarianism and tolerance. There was an enormous mismatch between what my generation wanted to be, as expressed in our passionate political oratory, and how we actually behaved. Writing now almost 5 decades of study later, de Waal finds human hierarchies can be quite apparent, but we don't always recognize them as such. And academics often act as if they don't exist. I have sat through entire conferences on adolescent human behavior without ever hearing the words power and sex, even though to me they are what teen life is all about. When I bring it up, usually everyone nods and thinks that it's marvelously refreshing how a primatologist looks at the world. Then they continue on their merry way, focusing on self-esteem, body image, emotion regulation, risk-taking, and so on. Yet among teens, there is nothing more obvious than the exploration of sex, the testing of power, and the seeking of structure. Example after example, study after study has chipped away at notions of human exceptionalism in the emotional and social realm. Consider what is called triadic awareness. Many animals obviously know whom they dominate or whom their own family and friends are, but chimps go one step further by realizing who around them dominates who else and who is friends with whom. Individual A is aware not only of his own relationships with B and C, but also of the B-C relationship. Her knowledge covers the entire triad. Triadic awareness may even extend outside the group, as shown by Mama's reaction to the zoo director. She had little direct contact with him, yet she must have picked up on how jumpy and deferential the caretakers acted whenever he stopped by. Other apes observe and learn, just as humans do when we understand who is married to whom or to which family a child belongs. Triadic awareness is not limited to apes. It's also been found in monkeys and ravens. We learn a lot about B by watching how B is with C. And we are far from the only species who does that. Scientists at the University of Kyoto tested how capuchin monkeys reacted to a scene in which a person pretended to have trouble opening a plastic container and turned to a human experimenter for help. The experimenter kindly gave the help. In the next scene, the person asked a different experimenter for help, one who turned away and ignored the request. Would the monkeys like the good guy or the selfish jerk? Mind you, this was about how the experimenter treated not the monkeys, but another person. After watching the scenes enacted in front of them, the monkeys refused to have anything to do with the despicable experimenter, turned off by her poor level of cooperation. They are watching, just as Mama was watching in order to pick up on the authority that the zoo director had. And the level of political intrigue in a chimp colony can come pretty close to our own. Duvall describes the case of Nicky. After Nicky became the new alpha male in the chimpanzee colony of Berger's Zoo, he regularly practiced strategic retaliation. His dominance was not yet fully acknowledged, and subordinates would often pressure him, banding together, chasing him around, leaving him panting and licking his wounds. But Nicky did not give up, and a few hours later, he would regain his composure. The rest of the day, he'd go around the large island to single out members of the resistance, visiting them one by one while they were sitting alone minding their own business. And he would intimidate them or give them a beating, which likely made them think twice before opposing him again. You may have noticed that presidents seem to age faster in office, that Obama, for instance, looked a lot more than 8 years older at the end of his presidency than he had at the beginning of it. In chimpanzees, too, alpha males live under constant pressure and can get stressed out. An alpha male at the Yerkes field station had a rival who never let up and provoked him every day. A photo of the chimp seems to show the constant worry reflected in his eyes. Our own species is remarkably plastic, and those linguistic constructs behind which we hide also allow us as a species to build civilization far beyond what other apes can do. And that too is a good news, bad news story. The Chimp Lessons, which time in one sermon allows me to only gesture toward, teach us what we may have hidden from ourselves, the basic power and sex dynamics that continue to be huge drivers of our behavior, howsoever our conceptualizing may dress them up in various disguises. The moral here, I take it, is not that since the drives for power and sex are only natural, we should drop our inhibitions and more boldly and aggressively assert those drives. Rather, my teaching today, as it so often is pay attention, notice. It's when we don't notice the operations of power and sex drives that they most control our lives. By paying attention to the arising of these drives in ourselves and in others, and only by doing so, we gain some freedom to decide for ourselves what to do about them. So let us not deny what we are. Let us not repress or suppress, except maybe temporarily, as a particular situation may require. Over the long haul, it's not repression that we seek, but that we be grounded in a clear awareness of what we are, that we may channel what we are into what we yet may be. May that be so. Amen.
Our closing hymn is number 368, Now Let Us Sing. Please sing along with the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore. If you sing low, sing the words in white letters. If you sing high, your words are in yellow letters. Until about 1:45 in, we switch. And then the upper registers sing the words in white letters, and the lower singers have the words in yellow. How fun is that?
1, 2, 3. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the hope within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the love within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Now let us sing to the power of the sing. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within.
Website. Now, please join Nikki Clemens for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
And our chalice extinguishing words are, as we extinguish our chalice, may it glow in our hearts, renewing our spirits, joining us to the forces of life, and awakening us to the transcendent wonder. Thank you.
That there should be something rather than nothing.
That we should exist at all.
That there should be others sharing with us this mysterious and beautiful thing, life.
The simple and amazing fact of existence is the invitation to constant wonder.
Dear ones, go in peace.
If you got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some folks might be a little smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.